Hey friends, it's Tamsin from Babbling Books. I'm really excited to share with you my travel journal. I traveled around Europe for 6 months, and during that time I kept a journal of all of the different places that I went to. I used a modified form of bullet journaling, and I'm going to take you through page by page the entire journal. What I'm going to do first is just give you a little bit of an outline of the system that I used. So the most common question I get asked is, what kind of journal is this? So this is a very basic floppy covered moleskin journal, and it has dots rather than lines or square. I just prefer the dots. The structure of this journal is pretty simple. I have my key, and on the first page I have my index. This is pretty standard for all kinds of bullet journals. Next I have my future log. Because I was traveling for 6 months, I divided it into 6 sections, and I put any important dates or significant things which I needed to remember, including which books I was reading for my book club. The next section has all the different countries that I either visited or planned to visit. I filled this section in long before I left Australia, and I used it as a place to record all the different kinds of sites and locations and restaurants and bookstores that I wanted to visit. So the next section is my monthly log, where I wrote down all the places that I visited and kept track of important things for Babbling Books across my YouTube channel and my Instagram. I did one of these double page spreads for each part of my trip. Now, because I knew I was going to be away for 6 months, I could easily leave enough space for 6 monthly spreads. And finally, the majority of my journal is dedicated to actual journaling. So I'm going to take you through all of these sections so you can get an idea of each of the pages and what they look like. I'll go quite quickly through the sections that you've already seen. So first up, obviously, is my index and my future log. This next section has all of the different countries that I went to, just so you can get an idea. Obviously, some have a lot more information. These were mainly countries that I actually visited. There are a few countries in here where I got suggestions from people, but because our trip was not planned out, and we just ended up going to the places that we were interested in, or we had time to visit, or were convenient to get to, we actually didn't end up visiting every country that I collected information for. And some, like Bosnia, have very little information at all. All of this information in here is really interesting, really useful. It's divided with a series of codes. So B is for book-related items, C is for cultural items, N is for nature, F is for food, and so on. If you're interested in close-ups of any of these pages, obviously you can just pause the screen and have a look. Otherwise, just send me a message and I'm happy to send you a photo of any of these pages, especially if you're planning to travel. So there's a blank page here, just in case there was an extra country. Next section is the monthly logs. As I mentioned earlier, they have travel column and my Babbling Books column. On the right-hand page, I have my to-do lists, which covers off general things like who I owe money, things I need to book for traveling, and then also my tasks for Babbling Books, so things I needed to review, to read, blog posts I needed to write, and so on. So these go all the way through month by month, and you'll see that sometimes I didn't do a really good job of recording all the information. Some days I missed things, some months I didn't have many to-dos, just general journal things. And I tried not to put too much pressure on myself to get things right. Now we reach the Good Beck. So this is my actual journal, starting off in Greece. And here I was starting to do a little bit of drawing and doing a timeline with some history. I really wasn't sure at this stage what my journal was going to look like, and I was really just working through some different ideas and different styles of journaling. I think I ended up being pretty consistent with how I did my journal and my layouts from this point onwards. So next we went to Albania, and while we were in Albania I started thinking about doing different city-by-city journals, but we only stayed in one city in Albania, so when we were in Montenegro I did the same. Here I had collected loads of tickets from different buses and trains, and I didn't want to put those in the sections that related specifically to one country, so I collected them all up together. In Serbia, I started doing city-by-city pages, so this one is for Novi Sad and Subotica. And I actually wrote a poem, which is extremely cheesy, but I wrote it while I was very tired late at night. So when we got to Budapest, I started to cut out some sections of maps and really started to do a lot more content for each of the places that we visited. Now I love this spread. This is my travel bookshelf. So while I was in Hungary, I decided to start keeping track of which books I read while I was traveling, and I continued to fill this in all the way up until I read The Good Immigrant, which was while I was on the plane flying home. So this spread became one that I kept referring back to. And I made myself a little key with a system of icons to indicate reread, physical books, travel buys, audiobooks, Kindle and translated books. And so that was a really useful thing for me to keep track of my reading. And then we went to Romania. In Romania we went to 3 different cities, and I had a lot of stuff to say about Romania. I also made some pages like this library one where I just talked about different themes and topics, and I actually came back and filled in this libraries page a lot later. I also did some spreads here where I just had general thoughts that didn't relate to a specific place that we visited. When we got to Iceland, I just had a kind of surge of inspiration, and so I drew this little quote which says, "I will not sell my friend," and that refers to a quote from a farmer in Iceland who refused to sell his waterfall to an electricity company, and I thought it was a really beautiful quote. This is one of my favorite pages in my whole journal, and this records all of the different cities that we stayed in, or rather places that we stayed in, you can't really call any of them cities, in Iceland while we were doing our road trip, and a lot of the waterfalls that we visited as well down here. Then we went to France, and I was really busy staying with family, so I didn't have much of a chance to write, and so my content for France is a little bit sparse, but I did write down quite a lot of the attractions that we managed to visit. We then went to the south of France, and it was my birthday. My sister gave me some of these really cute pusheen stickers, and you'll see them in a couple of other places in the journal. This is one of my other favorite pages, my reflections on our time in Amsterdam in the Netherlands. We actually went back to the Netherlands, and so this page kind of covers off our 2 different times there. In the Republic of Ireland and Northern Ireland, we also went on a road trip. And so I collected up lots of different items, including this leaf. I'm not exactly sure that I was meant to bring leaves back into the country, but hopefully I'm not going to get into too much trouble for that. Then we headed to Germany. In Germany, I was lucky enough to go and see Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them with Michelle from Madame Reads a Lot and a lot of other Instagrammers, which was great fun. We also visited a lot of different Instagrammers while I was in Bonn, in Frankfurt, in Munich, and I really enjoyed meeting with everyone. I absolutely loved Vienna, and I couldn't resist including the entire brochure from the Belvedere because it was such a beautiful museum and gallery, and I just adored it. On this spread, I started to record the different movies that we'd watched while we were traveling, just similar style to how I've been recording the books that I read, and this is just a really nice little record of what we got up to. Then I headed to Slovenia, where I caught up with Alia from Alia of Winterfell, and I really enjoyed my time in Slovenia, even though it was quite a short time. Around this time, I was also thinking about applying for jobs, and I was feeling very stressed, and I spoke to Lara from Writing Lara Ferrari, and she said this quote to me, "It might feel the same, but you are different." Then we went to Croatia. We had a lovely time in Zagreb. It was really, really interesting, and here I just couldn't resist including this postcard because the illustration is so beautiful. In Split, I tried out a little, I guess, information box by cutting that out of a brochure, and I had a lot to say about Split. We spent so much time on public transport throughout this trip that it seemed appropriate to continue with my theme from earlier of including lots of different bus tickets, train tickets, and so on from different places. And I think there's about 8 or 9 different countries represented here. We spent quite a while in Berlin in Germany, and so there's quite a lot of information here and lots of different places that we visited. I decided to do some spreads specifically on different places and different things that we did in Berlin because I just had a lot to think about. This was the Sachsenhausen concentration camp memorial, which was really confronting and distressing, but I think it was a really important place for me to visit, and I'm really glad that we went there, even if it was really sad. We also did a Red Berlin tour, which related to the communist era of when Berlin was divided into 2, and we learned a lot about the Berlin Wall, and it was really a very interesting tour. By then it was Christmas time, and I spent Christmas in Prague in the Czech Republic with my family who flew over from Australia, and we had such a lovely time in Prague. I met up with Jacob from Books Calling and had a wonderful time looking around the city. I visited some really incredible libraries that I just adored, and it was really an incredible experience. This is a page that I wrote while I was flying from Prague to London. It's just kind of whimsical little story and musings about what was going on in my mind while we were in the plane. And here, I'll just turn this around so you can see it a bit better. This is my ultimate travel playlist, or my road trip playlist perhaps. If you'd like to listen to this playlist, I will put a link in the description box below where you can listen to it on Google Play Music. When we got to the UK, we did a road trip once again. While we were on this road trip, I met up with quite a few people. One of them was Mia from Cozy Reads, and she left me this beautiful little note when she gave me a gift, so I decided to include it in my Nottingham page. We also went to Limehouse, which is also known as Pemberley from Pride and Prejudice, and had a great time in Manchester. We then stayed in Hay-on-Wye with Anne from Babbling Books, and we had just such an amazing time. It was really incredible. We also went to Bath and managed to stay in Jane Austen's apartment, which was a pretty incredible experience. Our next stops were Stonehenge, Brighton and Dover, and though it rained when we went to Dover and it looked nothing like this picture, it was really spectacular, and Stonehenge was just amazing. We then went to Cambridge, which was amazing, and I just got so many Harry Potter vibes from it, and I really enjoyed our time there. Once we got back to London, we decided to do a day trip out to Oxford. Oxford truly is like the Hogwarts of the UK, and you can really see where a lot of the inspiration for the movies came from. The dining hall looks just like the Great Hall, and actually they filmed sections of Harry Potter in this room here, which was the infirmary in Harry Potter. Our next adventure in the UK was to Edinburgh. We took the train there from London, and I really enjoyed my time in Edinburgh. I also bought these really cute stickers, which I pasted all over this section. I went on a little day trip to Glasgow, and I met up with Lauren from Fiction Tea and Christine from We Reader, and we had so much fun, and we walked, and I've drawn it on in a picture here, we walked all the way around down along River Clyde and then back up where we had Nando's for lunch. Now, even though we went backwards and forwards from London from the end of December until the end of January, I decided to group all of my information, all of my memories about London together in one place. So this last section of my journal was not strictly in chronological order. One of the first things we did when we arrived in London was book our tickets to the Warner Brothers studio tour to see the making of Harry Potter. I had the most amazing day. And check out this. I couldn't resist including the entire brochure because it has so many pictures of what was the most incredible experience. As any Harry Potter nerd will tell you, you really must go to London and check out the studio tour. Because it was Christmas time, we were lucky enough to be able to see the Hogwarts in the Snow exhibitions. I also had tickets to see The Cursed Child, and that was an incredible experience. We got to go and meet a lot of the cast members, and I got my program signed, and I just had the most wonderful time. I wasn't a huge fan of reading the script, but seeing it come to life on stage was a completely different experience, and I absolutely adored it. Here I just wrote some general thoughts about London as a city and my experience of visiting it. I was lucky enough to go and see a comedy show, which a friend of mine bought me tickets for, and to go to a remainder and promotional book fair with Anne from Babbling Books. I had a lovely time meeting up with people, Trine from Trine Books, and I also met up with Laura from Goodnight Boutique, and we went together to see Persephone Books. And with Trine, I went to the British Library. I also hosted an epic London Bookstagram meetup. These are the names of all of the people who came out to meet me in London, and it was just the most wonderful day. It poured with rain, so I felt like these stickers were the perfect accompaniment to my recollections of this incredible day. On our last few days in London, we tried to fit in as many touristy sites as possible because we really hadn't had a chance to see all of them. It was really hard to say farewell to London. I visited platform 9 3/4 in King's Cross 3 times in the last 2 days that I was in London because I really just didn't want to leave. My sister had given me some vouchers that she had created so that I could enjoy her favourite places in London, Shake Shack and M&M World. And so we did those on the last few days. The long flight home. These were my memories and recollections of the trip back home and really trying to figure out a way to consolidate the experience of travelling for 6 months and reflect on what that was like. And this is the final spread of my journal. It says home and heart, and this was what I wrote once I'd got back to Australia. And on the very last page, which was actually one of the first pages I started filling in, I started testing out some of the different pens that I was thinking of using. And as you can see, I gave them like a little circle rating in terms of whether they bled through the page and how good I thought they were. So for me, the Univol Jetstream is the #1 pen. So that's it. That's my journal. I really hope that you enjoyed having a peek through its pages as much as I enjoyed creating it and sharing it with you. That's it from me today, but if you enjoy my channel and you would love to hear more about my journaling, about my travels, and about my love of books, please think about subscribing and let me know in the comments below what videos you'd like to see from me.